Assertiveness Step by Step, Chapter 1 and 2, Slides of Notes from a Passive Point of View. Good self-care and respect for others underpins healthy assertiveness coaching. Before going on to this slide, you have to be in a place of safety to assert yourself against someone who poses a physical danger to you, like a stalker. This talks about asserting yourself with people in everyday life. Definition of self-care and respect for others. What is self-care? Self-care essentially means giving serious consideration to your own interest and preference. What is active self-care? Active self-care means you're seriously concerned with your own life and prioritize time to develop your own talents to their full potential. Self-care encourages you not to forsake your own development unless there's a very good reason to do so. What is selfishness? Too much self-care leads to selfishness. With this in mind, the principle of self-care needs to be tempered or combined with the principle of respect for others. Respect for others. This encourages you to acknowledge we live in a world with many individuals who have their own set of goals, standards, and preferences that will need to be met also live. You show respect for others as equals, not superiors or inferiors. This can also lead to a healthy compromise when our preferences are not met. The principles of self-care and respect for others is the basis of positive connections with others, allowing for personal expression and assertion of opinions through difficult interactions.
Principles that form the basis of assertiveness coaching. When an individual is not asserting himself, then usually one of these principles is being negated. Principle 1. Self-care encourages you to say no when you deem it appropriate. Respect for others requires you to accept that this principle also applies to all other people. Principle 2. Self-care encourages you to express your emotions, opinions, and beliefs when you deem it appropriate. Respect for others requires you to accept that this principle also applies to all other people. Principle 3. Self-care encourages you to acknowledge you will make mistakes and accept yourself for making them. Respect for others requires you to accept that this principle also applies to all other people. Principle 4. Self-care encourages you to be yourself without believing you have to be different for another's benefit. Respect for others requires you to accept that this principle also applies to all other people. Principle 5. Self-care allows you to be able to change your mind, even if this inconveniences others. Respect for others encourages you to accept that this principle applies to all other people. Principle 6. Self-care allows you to make decisions that others will find illogical without necessarily always having to give an explanation. Respect for others requires you to accept that this principle also applies to all other people. Principle 7. Self-care encourages you to decline the responsibility for finding solutions to others' problems. Respect for others requires you to accept that this principle also applies to all other people. Principle 8. Self-care encourages you to state your ignorance or lack of interest in a matter without feeling ashamed or embarrassed about so. Respect for others requires you to accept that this principle also applies to all other people.
Unhealthy beliefs that underpin lack of assertion. These can only be overcome by admitting ownership of these beliefs instead of blaming others or unfortunate life events for not asserting yourself. This requires emotional responsibility. Overcome the fear of not being liked or sometimes being viewed as selfish when you assert yourself. Selflessness leads others to believe your emotions are not important. You end up spoiling people. It teaches people your needs can be ignored. Therefore, you'll be taken for granted and disrespected and will feel unloved. all the things you believed selflessness would save you from. A balanced view is needed, as too much self-worth leads to narcissism, selfishness. Not enough leads to selflessness. The following healthy belief is more balanced. I accept that I am of equal worth compared with all other people. I also accept that I have different strengths and weaknesses, but these never make me inferior or superior to others. Overcome the fear of hurting or upsetting others that prevents you asserting yourself. If you accept the principle that everyone is responsible for their own feelings and emotions, emotional responsibility, your fear of hurting others when you have to assert yourself starts to diminish, as you will understand the hurt feelings belong to them, not you. A healthy belief might be, I would like the person not to feel hurt, but I have no guarantee they will not. Although uncomfortable, they and I can stand by our assertions. This reinforces the idea that assertion will not kill you or them, reinforcing others' ability to cope with their uncomfortable emotions. However, you will still take responsibility for what you say and how you say it. Overcome the idea that others should know what you want without you telling them. Unhealthy belief. People must already know what I want without my having to ask them. This desire is based on the vain hope that other people will summarize what you want by your tone of voice and body language. This passivity may result in them dismissing easily whatever it is you think they must do, or them completely missing it. This fuels aggression, as the belief that someone should know what you want without you telling them causes you to get angry when they don't do what you want. It does this by relying on your rigid standards you believe others should follow and obey automatically. A more healthy belief is, it would be nice if they knew, but they do not have to. It is worth tolerating the discomfort of speaking up, as there is the chance of my desires being met if I do. Overcome the idea you must have an easy life. This is fostered by the belief that maximum happiness can be achieved by doing very little, if anything, yet still have accomplished a lot. This is an unrealistic passive approach to life. In reality, it takes a lot of consistent hard work to be heard and for others to respect you. If you demand an easy life and attempt to avoid hassles, you will have a tendency to experience more discomfort. There are two reasons for this. You become more sensitive to life's hardships. For example, someone trying to avoid a red car in the street will be more sensitive to the sight of a red car than someone who doesn't. In the same way, if you avoid confrontation, you become more sensitive to it. It assumes assertiveness is not worth all the aggravation. The easiest way is to avoid confrontation altogether. This creates a vicious cycle. People learn from your behavior how you wish, prefer, or tolerate being treated, making clear what you find acceptable and unacceptable. If you choose to ignore someone who behaves indecently to you, that goes on to reward their behavior. Silence is consent to them. Saying nothing means others learn they can get away with it in the future. Therefore, we get behavior from people that we are willing to put up with without protest. A healthy alternative might be, I would like life to be easy, but I'm not immune from hassles and discomfort. Although assertion is temporarily uncomfortable, the long-term benefits outweigh the short-term gain of avoidance. Overcome the urge to keep your feelings to yourself. Not expressing your emotions leaves you looking distant and detached to those you get close to or try to. Then you might have unhealthy outbursts. In a case study, George would suppress his emotions, choosing passivity over assertion or expression of his wants and needs. He would have outbursts, to which people would say, "You're getting too emotional." He had a variety of reasons for not expressing his emotions. A more healthy set of beliefs might be, I would prefer not to express this uncomfortable emotion, but being human essentially means I will experience it. Although it's hard to assert myself, it's not going to kill me, and it will help in the long run if I do express how I feel. The belief encourages self-expression at the time emotion is experienced. In addition, it encourages the understanding that showing emotion is simply part of being human, and the effects are rarely as catastrophic as you may have previously imagined. It also prevents the long-term consequences of repressing and denying your emotions.